one thing that a lot of people don't know is that property management companies are some of the easiest to lend to. I didn't realize that. The reason for that, surprisingly, is property management companies, it's not reliant on one client. It's not like an accounting firm where 80% of your business comes from 20% of the clients. No, everybody contributes in some way. There are use cases where that's not the case, but most times you have so many clients, and if 20% drop, it's not going to kill the needle, and that's protecting the downside for management.
What is going on, Success with Class listeners? Thank you for tuning in to another episode here. This episode is packed with some really great insights. It's a gentleman by the name of Patryk Swietek. He owns a company called Stays You Like. It's a short-term management company, Airbnb, think of it that way. This kid is a dynamo, and I don't mean kid in a disparaging way. He's 27 years old, and within a year or two, he grew his company from zero to like $2.5 million a year. Incredible growth. And he did that through acquisitions. He was buying up other property management businesses. And that's how he grew so rapidly. And we speak about how he did that through creative financing options because he didn't really have the capital necessarily to make that first upfront purchase, and how he kind of scaled out from there and built out the systems in place to really deliver world-class service to any of the guests staying there. We also speak about on how to evaluate a deal, like what we're looking for as far as cash flow to make that great offer, what the evaluations are. We get really tactical really quickly. We also speak about Patryk's past, about how he always was an entrepreneur and how he started when he was 14, like doing computer server work. Really interesting stuff. I think you guys are going to really dig this episode. And more news, my book is still officially out. You can see it right behind me if you're watching the video. It's called Service Business Mastery. We get into really, really deep, high-level operations on how to structure your business, how to scale it, how to potentially exit it, how to build out the team around you. If you're interested in picking up a copy, just go to Amazon, type in Service Business Mastery. It's 99 cents. I wanted to give it away free, but I couldn't. For $1, you get the ebook. And it'll be packed with all the information you'll possibly need to get your business up and running. Would really appreciate the support. And as always, please like this video, subscribe to it, leave me a review on Apple. The algorithms take effect. It really helps me out. Would really appreciate it. All right, without further ado, let's get into the episode and let's listen to what Mr. Patryk has to say about property management. Thanks again for tuning in. All right, welcome back to another episode of Service Business Success with Class. This is your host, Steve Class. I am joined today by Patryk Swietek. Unlike other guests that I've had the pleasure of interviewing before, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting Patryk in person yet. And I actually didn't really know about him. I found him serendipitously just through his amazing social media presence, particularly on Instagram. And I was instantly captured by his outgoing personality, his command of the industry, that industry being short-term rental management, Airbnb, think VRBO, that type of industry. And I was like, I gotta connect this guy because he's doing marketing and he's doing property management the right way. And on a whim, I just sent him a DM, what's going on? And here we are, folks. So Patryk, I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, man. Dang, that is I almost blushed, man. I was like, damn, this guy's going all out on the hype man stuff. You're really good at that. I don't know if that's a skill you can use in the workforce or
listen, hire me. I'll just follow you around with like a banner and a big amplifier, and I'll just call out your name every time you walk into a room. Good sales tactic.
I need you. I need the class.
Yeah, anytime, man, anytime. So again, thank you so much for coming on. We're in very similar industries. I were before I sold mine. I was in property management sector, and in particular, looks like you're crushing on the Airbnb side. So I know that this wasn't your first venture. So I'm always curious to kind of peel back the onion and learn a little bit more about the man behind the entrepreneurship dream here. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Patryk. When were you always a natural born entrepreneur, like, kind of door knocking, selling lemonade, or is this something that happens just through intrinsic process? Walk me through like your early, adolescence, first job.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you like, oh man, you got to study business in college and you'll be an entrepreneur. I promise you. I wish I had this like crazy like, oh yeah, I'm natural But look, I mean, at the end of the day, for me, it just happened naturally. I always found problems and I was always felt the urge to solve them from a young age. Even at the age of, like you said, 10, maybe earlier, I was selling lemonade. That was definitely a thing. Uh, any money I can make or problem I can solve, I was doing it. And I mean, I did snow plowing at 12. 14 years old is when I started my first real business. I provided server space to people worldwide for gaming, and made around $40,000 a year as a
Get out of
14-year-old.
here. That's awesome, man.
And
No,
got into.
I mean, I hate to interrupt, but how old are you right now?
I'm 27. I just turned 27.
All right,
So
you have a euphoric face, so you look like a very young man, so that's impressive.
I am.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
first time I ever my first video game memory was probably Nintendo 64. So I'm not sure what
oh,
game
I
you were good
love
doing
that.
at the time, but
Yeah, I think I know your age just by you saying that. I was definitely in the Game Boy, GameCube era slash eventually the Wii. So that was like my thing, and I didn't play PlayStation. So I played PC games, and I was different like that, and because of that, I met friends that were also nerds like me that wanted to keep playing games, and I provided server space for them, and that's how it blew up. And I think naturally, what's really interesting is there was always this push and pull for me, Steve, that people wanted me to go down this path of success, which I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know how to define it. I thought solving real world problems was success, but clearly, people showed me that, hey, you don't have good grades, and you built this cool startup, but we're not accepting you to any of the colleges. I got rejected from every single college I applied to, other than the community college that was local. So that's where I went. So I went to community college, and I decided to go the path that they told me to go. And so I went to community college. I got great grades. I got the 4.0. I got into a top 10 business school, got a 4.0 there, started a bunch of different things. But it was always interesting because entrepreneurship was like the lady in the red dress. It was always something that distracted me. And I felt like it was a distraction from the real goal of success, which everyone told me was, getting a good job, getting good grades, that whole thing.
the rich dad poor dad kind of philosophy of the poor dad, so to speak, the education mythology.
Yes, exactly. And so 100% felt that pull in my life, and I kept going back on the track, right? So every time I would build something, like venture, I was in venture capital. I raised venture capital when I was in college, and I built this high tech startup doing virtual menus, and had a team of 5 to 10 people. And so I did that while maintaining a social life while getting 4.0. So, I mean, it was hard, but at the same time, I realized that my love and passion was definitely in entrepreneurship. Didn't really work out. Actually moved out to LA to work at a real job. Real job.
Totally.
So,
And I always found it funny that and
yeah,
you're not alone in this, where a lot of entrepreneurs will have success. Like I mean, you're incredibly young to have that success when you're 14 making these servers. And they still, that's how strong societal pressure is of the go to school mythology, that you ignore the success of the business because that's not the tried and true path that society deems or your parents want you to do. And you stick with, like, I just need to get my own 9 to 5 job still. So
isn't
that's
that
not alone, but that's
Steve,
crazy.
isn't that weird how like internally you feel like what this is truly what makes me happy, but externally the social pressures logically make you question those emotions and like makes you justify why you're going the path that you're going. It's kind of weird, right? And I don't know if you've ever felt that way. But it feels like a push and pull. Like I don't know, like do you
It
ever get
comes to
that?
this weird. It stems from when my opinion, when we were kids. The successful people around your stratosphere usually were the doctors, the lawyers, and like you need to have a accredited degree to reach that status symbol. And if you said to someone, "Well, yeah, my son is a doctor," their eyes light up like, "Oh wow, that's really really they made it, so to speak. That's a success." And that permeates the air, it seems, and it really cascades down to the child. Or if you're not an entrepreneur, so to speak, because your core circle of the people you have around you aren't typically entrepreneurs, they don't understand it. And when someone doesn't understand something, they're going to have an adverse reaction to it.
of like, oh, they'll talk about the failures. They'll talk about how like, oh, what's your business idea? What about the medical benefits? Like, how are you what about a pension? And you have like this pushback. Now, that wasn't necessarily the case in my family. I don't know if that was the case in your family, but I see that happening a lot to friends and family where they're struggling with this, and not rewarding kids. Like, for the fact that you turn your passion for video games into a business is just not a thing. I mean, it is now, but not just 10, 15 years ago. I was like, you're wasting your life away, was typically what people would tell me if I'm playing Halo or something like that.
And my parents had no freaking idea what I was doing, and they thought that I was just wasting my whole life behind a computer screen. And granted, I get it, but at the same time, it's hard. I think there's some differentiation. I mean, I look at people that are on TikTok and, you know, wasting their lives away at TikTok, but then they're creating content. I'm like, I don't know if they're really wasting their lives. But, you know, I it's so hard because generational gaps also kind of give not enough clarity to that, you know?
For sure. For
Um,
sure. So you had that pull where you had to get that 9 to 5. And what was that 9 to 5 in? Were you still in the tech sector at that point?
so yeah, I was a product manager. So I became a product manager, but get this company was a short-term rental company, Airbnb company. They did arbitrage. They took on leases and then they made more money on top of that. It was called Avance. And I helped them scale from 200 to 1,000 plus units. I was part of the team, at least, that did that. And that's really where I fell in love with hospitality. And that was a weird time because I loved what I was doing, but I hated what I was doing. It was really weird. And I couldn't pinpoint it at the time why I felt this push and pull of like, dude, I am literally doing a job I love. Why do I hate it so much? And going back to it, honestly, was the structure. It was me asking questions or trying to understand higher level strategy, but not being part of that. I felt like my skills were being tampered. Like I was a fish trying to climb a freaking pole, and it just made no sense. Like, why am I doing this? And so I realized that, I mean, they laid me off, thank God, because I probably wouldn't have left. I like to commit to something and stick with it.
Same here, man. I was
But
laid off during COVID, so blessing in
there you go.
disguise.
Same thing happened to me. Oh, funny enough, I'm actually wearing this shirt. So the people that are for visual, I don't know if
Menu
it's visual. Menu 3. This is the company I started that raised venture capital for and all that. So, anyways, that's coincidence. But yeah, I'm going back to the story. I think they laid me off, which was great because I wouldn't have. I think that is like a pivotal moment for a lot of people. A lot of people won't change their life because change is hard. But if forced factors change their lives, then it could change their lives. So I think like forever in a good way, right? So like, for example, COVID did that for a lot of people. I would argue that COVID was a fantastic place to kind of help people reset and kind of think about what am I doing with my life? And that's what happened to me. And so I decided to keep going down the path. I tried 3 different jobs and I got fired from 3 jobs in 1 year. And so I realized, damn, like newsflash, I started taking a lot of personality tests because I was freaking out. Like, what's wrong with me? You know, like, am I like a low IQ individual? I didn't know what was going on. I was like, am I just stupid? Like, am I not good personality? Am I not good a person? Like, I had all these questions. And so I just started going into all these personality types. And that gave me a lot of clarity on who I am, which was really cool. But I realized I'm basically every personality test told me that I should not be working for a company, pretty much. It's like you're pretty much screwed. You got to either start your own business or like, I don't know, there's only a few companies that you do well in. I think one of them was be a lawyer. I'm like, I'm not going back to school. So
Yeah. I don't want to saddle myself with debt again, right?
Yeah, right. So anyways, so I decided to pursue short-term rental investing, and I made that commitment, and I bought my first cabin September of 2021. September 2021, bought my first cabin.
Let's talk about that first step to commit to a property, because it's no small undertaking. There's a pretty hefty investment usually. Did you have the capital from just working years as your 9 to 5 job, and this was a leap of faith, or were you already doing arbitrage? And for those who are listening, who aren't really familiar with arbitrage, it's essentially a master lease that you do with a owner saying like, hey, I'm going to commit 5 years to this. I'll give you X number of dollars per month. You can structure really any way. I mean, that's a whole podcast into itself. And then you can make a percentage of the profits as the person who's running the Airbnb. Was that your first move, and that built up the capital for you to buy your own investment property? Because you mentioned you went to arbitrage. You were working for a company that was doing arbitrage. Is that your first step, or was your first step buying the property?
Yeah, good question. Arbitrage, I tried it. I couldn't figure out the legalities of it, and I kind of gave up. I called around 100 people to try to manage their properties for them as a co-host, and that was I didn't even know what I was doing at the time. I was just like, hey man, no money down. I can manage somebody else's property and don't have to have experience. I mean, I have experience, so why not? And it didn't work. I tried 100 people.
You gave it a college try.
Yeah, I gave a very loose definition of trying, but I thought the only way I was going to do it is I had to buy one. There's no other way to do it, and I saw I think this is the thing is I started listening to right people. When people say don't listen to anybody, screw everybody, like, two middle fingers, like, screw everyone else. I think you should listen to some people. I think you should be listening to right people. And so, like, people that are listening to this podcast, I think that is a fantastic way of listening to right people that have made success or at least strides in the area that you want to go in. I think that is a fantastic place. For me, I just went to a community where people were buying short-term rentals, and they were buying them in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. They were living in California. They're buying in Tennessee, and it was cheaper. And then I thought to myself, if they can do it, why can't I? And the money that I had was all the money that I had from working the company when I was 14. I still had money from that. I paid off my college. I did.
No kidding.
I still had some leftovers. I had like, I think 40 grand or something like that left, like 40,000 something, which is nice. But at the same time, none of my jobs made me enough money to like, I didn't keep a job long enough to make a significant amount. But anyways, did that, and was able to get into a first studio cabin. The funny thing is, the accountability is huge, right? So I knew about short-term rentals since 2019, but I was buying my first one in 2021. I keep thinking to myself, what if I had the mentorship or like the right people to tell me how to do everything? Because I probably would have done it right. If I would have continued to call those owners and not give up after 100, maybe I could have snagged a deal or two that would have literally changed my life. But I didn't. And, I go back to that. And that's why these days I don't let opportunities slip. I take them on head first. And that's exactly why I bought the property management company. But that's a whole nother story. So
sure, we'll get
to that.
So you purchased this first property. Is it cash flowing day one? Like, how long did it take you to figure out the furniture? How long did it take you to make it so this is profitable? How did you build out your team? Like, this is kind of, I'm sure, a little harrowing for you, since this is your first step and it's your money now, not some another company's money at this point.
Right. So at this point, I bought this cabin. It's 2,000 miles away. It's a studio cabin. I put 10% down, so around 30,000. It was $306,000, and I put 10% down vacation home loan. So I put $30,000 into or as down payment, and then I had closing costs. And then I had like maybe small little things that I flew out there. I put up like maybe small little bed sheets and things like that. I didn't really go above and beyond for furniture. I kept the existing furniture. It was an existing Airbnb. They made $33,000 a year. So I, just by better marketing, better photos, and better systems, I was able to almost double the revenue. I actually made $60,000 that first year. And so cash flow low interest rates, so cash flow $25,000 net, and it was the best purchase I could have made, honestly.
So Leap started your career, so to speak, in being your own business owner. At what point now? You mentioned like you tried to do the arbitrage before. eventually, the capital runs dry. And then it's like, if you only had 40,000 to begin with, you just use pretty much
Right.
all of it to buy this one property. How'd you get your second one and everything henceforth?
Yeah. So at this point, I didn't have any. So I didn't have any money. So I was done for. I was making 25K net a year, but that's not enough to really move the needle too much. But I decided to quit my job because I hated. I was not a good employee. So I quit my job
Most
and I said,
entrepreneurs aren't good employees. So you're
yeah,
good.
right. So I was making 2,000 net a month ish, 1.5 to 2K. So depending on the month. And that was my living expense. So I was like, all right, I'm
Smart
just gonna
living
do it.
style, right?
So I'm just gonna live below my means, way below, because I didn't really spend money on anything, and I'm just gonna be okay. And I went out to a party where I met this is what happens when you actually take action, you do stuff. Because I had one property under my belt, when I went up to parties or, little get-togethers, I was able to say, hey, I'm a short-term rental investor. I was an escrow on my property.
Yeah, you're not
And,
you're not lying either. You are, even though it's just one condo.
It's just one, but hey, I am. And so that kind of shifts the thinking. And plus it gives you a lot more authority when you're talking to people. So I met a guy who had flipped over 100 houses. His name is Josh. He's my business partner to this day on the management side and otherwise. But when I met him, he wanted to get into Airbnbs. I had one Airbnb. He wanted to get into it, or short-term rental. And he wanted to get into it. And I was like, hey man, I can teach you the way. Kind of like the Jedi, But then he told me he can teach me the way of flipping. And he has a lot of capital that he's built up over time. And he just wants cash flow. I was like, let's do it. So we partnered up and we did 5 deals in around 6 to 9 months. So we did 5 deals together, or four deals. I had 5 total. So 4 deals we did together.
Well, is this all the Smoky Mountains at this time?
This was in Joshua Tree now. So now we transitioned to Joshua Tree because it was pretty local to us, and he had a lot of people in the desert that he knew as contractors that we could use in Joshua Tree, and so we kind of transitioned there. And that was the start of everything, because after that, we did the 5 properties. We bought these ugly homes that were torn down. We renovated them, and I did all the work, and he put up the capital, and that's how we did all the deals. That got me cash flowing a lot faster, a lot better, and so put me in a better position. Yeah, and then eventually what came about it is I decided I wanted to get into co-hosting. I was like, I need more cash flow because I'm still paying him 10% on the money that he lends me, right? So
Sure. Yeah, it's not like he's doing it for free. Like there's
not
still
doing
like
it for
he's
free.
the bank, so to speak.
He's the bank. So like any money that we don't cash out refi, from the refi, then whatever's left in there, like my half, I'm paying him 10%. And so, it's not a total freebie, but that's it cut into my profits. But guess what? I was okay with that because but I was starting to run out of cash. I'm like, to do more deals, I need cash. So I started trying to do co-hosting or managing other people's property. And I'm looking around to see who I should co-host for, what should I do. At this point, I had a company called STR Nation. So I was doing a community, and I did a conference in Vegas with 150 people. And so I did the whole thing. I had reputation in the industry at this point. And so, and I was doing social media at the time too. So at this point, I realized I had something, and that helped because a connection of a connection reached out to me and said, you know what? I don't have one co-host client for you, but I have 14. She had somebody that was selling their co-hosting company or management company. And I didn't think twice. I just went into it and I just bought it. So
now,
I made a lot of
when
mistakes.
Was this a seller's financing deal where they held the note, or was it like, hey, we need all this money up front type of thing? Because I know a lot of people are interested in acquiring properties.
Yes. So get this. So this is why property management companies, I realized that property management companies, instead of trying to build from scratch or, try to sell people one by one, I rather just buy a bulk amount, get the domain authority, get the brand authority, get the systems and operations already in place, get at least some sense of people in place. And that kind of gives you kind of a framework or a foundation to build on. And then I just took my best business practices and kept going with it. But the way we structured the deal was we didn't know what we were doing. Honestly, I overpaid for it. But I learned a lot, but I overpaid. And it was, we put 50% down. So we put 50% down. I brought in Josh once again to put the 50% down. And then I seller carried the 50% on the back end for 1 year until we understand how much money the original profile made. So depending on how much money made, let's say they made 200,000, then we make then we give the full amount of the second half. If it made 150, then we give X amount. If it made 100,000, we give X amount. So we kind of did like a breaking down tiered system that allowed us to basically see, like if everyone just leaves, we have at least some kind of, protection on the back end. So we were kind of smart there. But
I love that, man, because to acquire a property or a business, I should say, for property management in particular, a lot of people, I think, have this question mark where they don't know how to structure a deal. And it's really any way you want to do it and the other side's willing to do, you can do anything. So you can do what you just mentioned, where it's based on incentivization, where it's like, I make more money, you make more money. I make less money, you make more less money, because these are your accounts that I'm buying. Another way, this is but in particular what I did, is something called a clawback. I'm like, hey, I'll give you X number of dollars, no problem. But if I lose these 3 houses and the owners take it over, that's going to be X number of dollars taken off the money that I'm owed to you. And you could, so there's so many creative ways you can do to make sure
I didn't know
covered.
It was called a clawback, but that's that's pretty much what we did. Kind of like a seller carry and then like a clawback. So that's interesting. I feel like everyone has a different way to structure, like you said. I'm in acquisition number 2 and acquisition number 3. So
you learn every time, man. Every time there's an acquisition, you're like, oh, this is great. I got to apply this for next time. 100%.
My third one, right now we're going through it. We're just buying contracts. We don't want they're leaving as a property management company. They've been in distress, and I didn't want to buy the whole management company. But what we did is I broke out a deal per contract, and that's the way we're structuring it. So that's one way to do it as well. And then my other one that I'm buying is a fully functional company doing really well. And that one we're buying with the SBA loan. So we're putting 10% down and we're buying, the full, whatever the amount is. And we're netting a pretty strong amount of net cash flow pretty fast. And so, but then that has its own challenges, right? So it's like seller finance is a lot easier. You can close a lot quicker. This one, we're having to go through all of the legal procedures.
SBA loans aren't fun. I know that from firsthand. Yeah. It's a lot of documents, man.
A lot of documents, yeah. So
how are you finding these properties, by the way, or companies, I should say, that you're acquiring? Is this through relationships? Is it through like on, bizbuy.com? How are you actually finding these companies that are distressed potentially to take over?
It's just, I wish I could tell you there's like a secret sauce. It's just business, and it's just relationships. So I'll go into a lunch meeting with somebody, or whatever it is. Like if anybody in any market wants to meet with me about I just always give, and then sometimes things come back, and I don't expect anything to come back, but times people see potential and they'll talk to you. And so like this one, for instance, like the recent one that we had, it was a player in the area. They were selling their commercial building, and then we heard about distress from the owner. And without giving the name away, just out of respect, great guy, and just like everyone was going to leave and he was going to get nothing. So we put up a plan together where he could get something potentially, so it's not like just a loss. So like there's stuff like that where he was dissolving already. So I think
the key word here is relationships, and that is the most important thing, is not burning bridges. It's a very small industry. People think it's a huge one. If you're in a certain sector, LA, Joshua Tree, there's probably only a couple of key players who are in that area. So your reputation, your word is what's going to carry the value, not so much going online and just cold calling people to buy business. That obviously has its own merits and needs, and that does work. But for instance, when I sold my business, I made one phone call to someone I built up a 3-year relationship with, who was my competitor. One phone call, then 24 hours after sending over our books, I had an all cash offer because I had that great relationship and he knew who I was and he knew what kind of business I ran. So on the sell side or the buy side, it's so integral and that you maintain this, and you're not just hiding underneath the radar or being so hyper competitive where you try to undermine the other companies in your area and get that reputation. There's enough fish in the sea, so to speak.
Oh, 100%. And look, here's the crazy thing about just business acquisition. So number one, relationships are the easiest. I say easiest because trust is really like why people work with you. So if you're not doing that, the second best way is to either do one of two things. This is what I tell people. So one of two things. One I really like to do is LinkedIn, super slept on, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and then finding owners that have vacation rental businesses. Like you can tailor it down. And I like to look for there's different keywords, and then just reaching out to them through LinkedIn, through email, getting all their information, and then just doing follow-up and trying to at least see where they're at. Most times, like where you want to be with the business owner is you want to find somebody that wants to either leave the industry for whatever reason. There's something going on. Like the first one, they had a baby, and so like the baby was taking up a lot of time, and that's why they needed to leave. And they were working on hotel projects. So I'm like, respect, like you don't want to be in this business. So I get it why you're selling. The other one was at the point of just in lawsuits and like didn't want to deal with any of this of the industry anymore. They were just losing market share, and they're like, this is not for me. But at the same time, they weren't doing things like all the way like that I would do it. So I definitely have some ideas of how I can maybe not do better, but maybe in a different way that might make more money for the owner or whatever, right? So there's always ways to add value, even for struggling businesses.
In most cases, these owners, they're gonna be in pain from something. It could be a personal pain, like a baby on the way, or God forbid, someone's sick in the family and they can't focus, or they're burned out from working 60 hours a week because they don't have the proper systems in place.
Right.
Whatever it is, there's going to be a reason why they want to sell. I mean, it's not if someone's making great money and their personal life is great, chances are they're not going to sell because they're enjoying the process, or they have the right team, so not putting in so much time. You're going to be looking for owners essentially that just want out for whatever their reason is.
But also the one that the big one that I'm in right now, that I'm buying, they weren't in a rush to sell. They just didn't want to sell to a corporation. They wanted to sell to and this is important. They want to sell to somebody that's going to keep the legacy going. And I think that's huge because when we built the relationship, we realized we had the same values. We operated the businesses the same way. And they saw for the first time, they're like, I would be willing to work with you. And that was just not something like, that's because we're aligned. Like we're like, for the first time, they realized if we want the legacy to keep going, we don't want to screw our owners over like Vacasa does when they buy property management companies and they lose 50% of their business, right? So this is like the way to do it, where it's much safer in that retrospect. And there's a lot of business owners out there, like with hotels, with campgrounds, with anything. There's so many opportunities to buy businesses of people that are not even distressed per se, but they're not in growth mode. They were just coasting. And I think that's another separate thing. Is I actually asked this other guy, I was like, how much would you sell your business for? And it was way above what I would pay for a business. But the difference there was he was in scale mode. So for him, he was like, well, I want the upward potential of this business.
I see where this is going, right?
I see where this is going. So like, I want that number up there. It's going to take me 2 years to get there. And like, for me, I can't pay that because then I'm banking off of future potential cash. It's just a ripoff from a price perspective. It's not a
Call
reasonable
me in
price.
2 years when you're at that number, and then I can give you that number. Yeah.
Maybe I can give you that number, or just in general, like, just don't do business with those people because they're not looking to sell. So the people that are best to sell.
What's the most important evaluator when you're looking at a business to acquire? Is it current cash flow? Is it the status of the homes, meaning if they're like luxury listings, so to speak? Is it like what for you? Is there any criteria that they has to hit where you're like, this is exactly what I want to go for? And obviously, you could put your own twist. You could put your own systems in place to really push the envelope. But what is your criteria on that side? And what advice can you give someone who wants to maybe buy a property?
Yeah, good question. So criteria definitely is, well, it's so broad, but financials, I always look at financials, and I have to ask myself, if I take on this business, will I be able to replicate what the previous owner did T to T? So here's the thing. This is where I messed up big time. And I made a $100,000 mistake. So I'm just gonna give you guys the lesson. Where I made the mistake was I took their books as tried and true, and I didn't incorporate what it would cost for me to run this business, because the owner was in a day-to-day. They had, one of the owners was the accountant department. There's a lot of other things that I had to pay for, like,
that
like
they weren't even counting on the books because he was just like, oh,
that
it's an
was
owner draw.
accounted.
Yeah,
Right.
sure.
And so like they didn't have the expense for an accountant. They didn't have the expense for payroll taxes. They didn't have the expense for a lot of these things. I'm like, crap, I have to take on these expenses. So you have to prorate that accordingly. So whatever they have on their books, you have to prorate it accordingly to what you would be running as a business, and then take a multiple of that. Does that make sense? So like, I think that is the biggest consideration that I know. And like in our industry, from what I've seen, it varies a lot. But I've seen Biz Buy Sells actually tells you what multiples companies are trading at. There's actually a whole table for that. So property management companies are trading at about, right now, this year, 2.6 multiple, which means
vacation rental management companies.
Well, property management companies.
Well, so property management for long-term tenants, right? So that's like 12-month leases.
Yes.
I wish it was 2.6 or 2.7. It's usually lower than that. Because the potential to make additional money isn't as high as Airbnb, where you can kind of really control your day-to-day rates as opposed to being locked into a 12-month lease.
True. But there's also a lot more stability there.
100%. Oh, yeah.
So one thing that a lot of people don't know is that property management companies are some of the easiest to lend to. I didn't realize that. I was like, what?
Very true. It's amazing.
And the reason for that, surprisingly, I learned this just recently, is they're like, property management companies, there's like, it's not reliant on one client. It's not like an accounting firm where it's like 80% of your business comes from 20% of the clients. No, it's like everybody contributes in some way. There are use cases where that's not the case, but most times you have so many clients, and if like 20% drop, it's not going to kill the needle, and that's protecting the downside for management. But also some things you keep in mind, just backtracking a little bit for valuation purposes. What's more valuable is to have contracts in place. Like having a 2-year contract is going to give you a lot more stability and a higher price point and valuation for your company than you're co-hosting everything. When you're co-hosting everything,
you brought that up, because I think a lot of property management, vacation managers in particular, want the easy out for their clients. They want to build that compelling offer, as Mr. Hormozi says, of like, no contracts, just give me a 30-day heads up, you're out. However, I advocate a little bit on the other side where you should have a contract, not so much to scare your potential client, but it's assignable. Make it so you can sell this asset, so to speak, in that case. Otherwise, you might be stuck, or an owner might say, hey, I agree to this, I'm out type of situation. Without that, the value isn't there technically, because your clients could all leave the next day. Now, they won't, but for evaluation purposes, it's something really to consider in spite of having a really good offer on the front end. What's your opinion on that? I'm just curious. Do you value what kind of Hormozi says about having that unbeatable offer, or do you make up for that in a different way with the different offers to your owners?
It's a push and pull. I'll be honest, currently how we're running things, we do the offer, the invaluable offer, where we can bring on a lot of clients really fast, but also we're in a place where we have to be competitive, especially to get some of the bigger dogs We have to be competitive on our rates. You have to be competitive on a lot of things. So we're okay doing that. We're okay building the relationship that way. But some of these legacy companies have 2-year contracts. I mean, it's a put, like you said, I think, Steve, it's there's pros and cons to both, you know?
For sure.
So I think once we build a reputation, I think that's the next step for us is definitely transitioning to more longer term contracts. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, the way I used to structure it was a 12-month minimum contract, and it was such an easy sell. I'm like, hey, it takes a lot of work for me to onboard this, to really get it humming, to get your reviews, to really make it so you actually see cash flow. I need at least 12 months to see this. And then after 12 months, give me a 30-day notice. So at least there's a commitment that's there on the front end as a continued partnership. Now, you can structure it any which way you want, but that's what worked for me personally.
So we do similar. Sometimes we'll do a year, sometimes we'll do 6 months. And then we do month to month with a 2-month notice. That's what we do. So it's pretty similar to kind of what you were talking about.
So at this stage now,
Yeah.
how many homes are currently under your management? Like how many do you actually own, and how many are you arbitraging now?
Yeah. So I don't arbitrage anything, but for ownership, I own 7. Not all of them are live. And then I manage around, I have 42 signed right now. So 42 signed, 33 live, I believe. So pretty solid.
I'm going to give you a chance to humble brag. If you don't mind sharing, what would you say your gross revenue is? Not what you take home, but just like what do you say across the board is?
So we're scaling so fast. So for the 33 live that we had in the last 30 days, last time I checked was 260,000 a month.
That's amazing, man.
It's a lot. I can't even believe it.
Patryk is 27, $220,000 a month, and obviously we know that's not in your pocket, but that's highly
260. Not to say that it's.
Oh yeah, throwing $40,000 in there.
You told me to humble brag, so
yeah. That's very impressive, Patryk. That really is.
Thank you.
So that's and especially in this short time span. I mean, 2021 is when you started.
Well, I started the management company. We had beginning of this year. We're recording in 2023. Beginning of this year, January, I had 6 of my own. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have
in a year. You added this
in a year, and I added that much. So that's that. March 1st is when we took over the management company, and we started with 14. We dropped 4, and now we're 42. So adding my own as well. So, we over 25 contracts signed.
And I always say it's not really
months.
the number of homes that you manage. It's more of the actual profitability. I mean, I know some people who manage 5 super hyper luxury homes that are $3 million each on property. And they're making more than someone who's managing 100. So for you, is it more quality over quantity at this point, this stage in your career?
Yeah. So I feel like we're getting to a point where we're probably going to purge some.
The bad owner,
and it's just bad owners. Honestly, I don't even care about the properties as much as the owners. If it's like an okay property, I'll take it on. I'll continue doing whatever I can for the owner if they're nice. But there's an asshole tax. I'm sorry, guys. There's an asshole tax. I don't want to deal with butt heads, and quite frankly, I'm willing to say no. And so to answer your question, most of them are. There's some that are ultra luxury. I say ultra, I say like pretty, like whatever for our area. And then there's some that are luxury-esque, and then there's a lot that are in the middle. But when I say in the middle, I'm not saying like they're ugly. Like these are nice homes. Like we don't take on anything that doesn't make us at least $1,000 a month. So if it doesn't make us $1,000 a month, we don't take it. So that's how we come up with our fee as well. So like, let's say it's like if somebody wants 20%, but they only bring in $700 a month, we're not going to take it.
Yeah, it does not worth your time or energy at that point.
Yeah.
So you mentioned before I hit record here that you have a number of W-2 employees. What does your team look like these days? Like, what does it take to run this amount of homes, the 42 homes that you have?
Yeah. So 42 homes, we've definitely overstaffed in the sense that we're building for scale. I believe that a lot of times you have to build foundation before you really need it. And so we really don't need the foundation, but I hired a COO or VP of Ops or whatever you want to call it, my integrator. She's incredible. She builds out all the systems across the company, all of the weak points that we have. She's building like a guest ticketing system right now that's going to be very similar to how customer success teams work across the board in the country, things like that we're really working on. It's funny because tomorrow I'm actually going to Joshua Tree for a 3-day retreat.
Awesome.
To literally spend time with the leadership team to put together a plan for 2024 and like what we want to build. And like we're being very intentional, not because like we're this crazy big company, is because we want to become that crazy big company. And so to be that way, you need to think like they do. You have to build systems that way. So that's why we're being very intentional. So that's a long-winded answer. But I have 2 area managers on top of that for the area. I have 5 virtual assistants, and they're incredible. They are my lifeblood. I love them. And then I have an in-house accountant, also from the Philippines. Love her. She's incredible. She makes so much easier to do invoicing and all that. And then we have a handyman in house, and then we have around 20 cleaners. So,
and that's 20 cleaners in house as well.
1099s, but they decide if they want to work with us or not. But
sure.
They're pretty much, they do a lot of business with us. So
that's fantastic, Patryk. And it's it's when you mentioned that you're going into this 3-day retreat to set goals. So many business owners don't do that, where they're not conveying the mission statement to their teammates. And it's more just that they get caught in the minutia of the day-to-day. So the fact that you're doing that speaks volumes of your level of an entrepreneur. Now, you mentioned future plans, right? What is your scalability in your head? Do you want to get to a certain number and like, I'm good, and then you want to do something that's maybe a little bit different or off the cuff? Like, what is the long-term plans now? And I should mention the company is called Stays You Like, just in case anyone's wondering.
Right. So long-term goal, I mean, right now, when we take over this new company, these next 2 companies, we're probably going to be close to 100 units. So by March,
getting these all onboarded.
I'm hoping. I know we'll hit at least 80, but I want to get to 100. So my goal is to get 100 by March 1st, 2024. So that'll be 1 year from when I started and had 6 of my own to literally 100 in 1 year. That would be awesome for like, just for numbers. It'd be really cool to have it, but I'm not stressed about it because it's numbers are numbers. We're going to eventually purge some anyways. So, but the idea here is that we're definitely thinking about growth. I think a lot of behind the scenes is happening right now, which is really good. I'm really happy about it. And the main goal would be $10 million exit. And so when you do the math, let's say for easy numbers, 3x multiple, I'm going to have to be at the $3.3 million net. And so that's the question that we're going to figure out in this strategy session in the next couple of days is what are our roadblocks, where we have to go, what are the things we should focus on in Q1 2024, that kind of thing. So that's the goal. That's the end goal, is $10 million exit. And I'm hopefully to be like Steve Class. That's the goal. And that's where I'm at. Yeah.
So in order to get there, are you primarily looking for just acquisition after acquisition, or do you also have your own scale plan of actually getting property owners to come to you and saying, "Hey, here's the keys to the castle"? Are you doing both?
Oh, yeah. We're doing both. So sometimes what happens when we push efforts, because we do a lot of marketing, we don't do outreach, which is something that we're probably going to explore, but we do a lot of marketing. We do really well. We haven't been focusing on getting clients. That's the crazy thing. Clients come to us. So we've built out this infrastructure, which you probably talk about a lot, I'm assuming, but we built out this infrastructure where we're the experts in our space. I have my own podcast. I have a social media presence. I have all this stuff. People come to me and they ask, "Hey, I really want you to manage my property." And so there, the sale just becomes, can we, or somebody has any interest and they come to me from referral. So now those are a lot easier than having to go convince somebody to leave somebody else or try to do anything that's a little bit. Sales is hard when you don't have, well, not hard. I'm not going to say it's hard, but it's more difficult than marketing where the people already trust you and know you and like you.
Right, the know, like, and trust factor. That's what I
Yeah,
always like to espouse, that where your marketing is so good that it's not a sales call you're taking. It's more of like a
yeah,
verification of your services before they sign a contract.
exactly. They just want to see the contract. They want to verify that we're,
The numbers, like, what
yeah,
are you promising me? Of course.
yeah, yeah.
So in order to get to that $10 million number, you're gonna have some work to do. But the fact that you scale to this level, I'm sure that there's startup bumps, right? Always is, either operationally or in the back end fulfillment. But you live and learn and you grow. And I really love that you hired a COO already, because a lot of people will hire from the bottom down. They'll start with like the boots on the ground employees and then scale up. If you don't hire an A player who is your equal partner on the skills you lack, there's only so far the company's going to go, because you're the smartest one in the room. You have to have someone like you mentioned, this lady who's your COO, who has a completely different mindset, doesn't want to be in front of the camera, and is like, I have these great ideas that I'm going to take your ideas, I'm going to implement them all the way down the chain. And that's what your recipe of success are.
Steve, she's incredible, and she's everything that I'm not, and I'm everything that she's not, and my business partner as well. Me and my business partner are pretty similar in a lot of ways. He's better in some things than me, and I'm better than him in some ways, and we just kind of collaborate. But this COO is just next level. Like you said, definitely recommend hiring A players in the top. Actually, that's a good way of putting it. Top bottom hiring. I like that, because people are like, well, that's too expensive. And trust me, yes, I know. I'm paying her. She probably gets paid more than me, but not even probably. She does. But I'm okay with that, because I know that with her, like, the company is going to be incredible, and it's already has been. So I'm okay.
If you
with
want to
that.
get to the next level, you have to have people who are willing to take you there. Not you take them there, for them to take you there, because you surround yourself by the best of the best, so to speak.
100%.
So, Patrick, what advice would you give to someone who wants to start a property management business? You started off with a condo in the Smoky Mountains. Do you still have that one, by the way, or have you sold it?
I sold it. It was a cabin, and I sold it for a profit of I took $175,000 of cash out.
Sure, you're fine.
That was a great property that I was able to invest into my area in Joshua Tree. So
perfect. So, what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out? Maybe they only have $10,000 to their name, and they want this to be like their career.
Yeah, $10,000 to your name. $10,000 can take you very far when you spend it on marketing dollars. I would do that. I would spend it on either self-improvement on knowledge that you can learn from, or on taking a bet. Like, for instance, getting systems for like CRM, or like building investing in something that's going to get you to the next goal to allow you to get like clients, for instance. Like, I would invest into that, like marketing, for instance. And learning the skill sets to grow and scale, because I think the highest ROI is there. And then trying to either backtrack. Best piece of advice is focus on finding the deal, because the money will come. The money will always come. If somebody gave you a $20,000, if I told you get, Steve, $40,000 for a Ferrari, would you buy it?
For me, yes.
Yeah, you would buy it.
It's a great deal.
It's a great deal. Exactly. Even though you don't need it, people from a consumer mindset will say, well, that's a horrible deal. I wouldn't want to buy that.
Well, I know Ferraris go for $100,000. So it's
I know that. Yeah, I know that
Yeah.
I can sell for $100,000. And do you think you can raise the money, $40,000, to make a quick flip and make $60K? Yes. And so I think looking at the value and understanding that you have to convince people to work with them on either arbitrage or with managing their properties. If you can do that, then you win. So that's what I would focus on.
And then we have a closing tradition here on the podcast where I ask the same question, and it's in the same vein of what I just asked before, but I want you to rewind the clock to you personally, to a younger Patrick who is 18, 19, 20 years old, and isn't the confident man we see in front of us today. What advice would you give to your younger self based on what you've learned in the past 5 years?
Okay. So, Steve, you've been this you've done school, right? You've graduated college. Did you graduate
Got my
college?
undergrad. Yes, sir. Waste of
There you go.
money, but that's another side.
I did the same thing. So you graduate college, so you know this firsthand. When you go to school, people teach you that you should always do your own work. You should never copy. You should never steal, and you just produce the best thing you can and find the answers. And there's only one right answer. In real world, that's not how it works. In real world, there's multiple answers. There's multiple paths, and you should absolutely steal ideas, not people's properties, but ideas.
Still flat screen TV. Yeah.
Yeah. I gotta clarify that. Steal ideas and copy ideas. That's what I would say. I think and that's like one of the biggest regrets I have is I wish that I copied somebody sooner.
All right. Copy and then do better. That's why I always like to add.
Do better.
Copy and innovate.
Yep.
So
Copy and innovate.
Always, man, always. Patryk, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. If someone wants to stay at some of these amazing properties in Joshua Tree, where can they find out more about it? And where can they find you on social media?
Yeah, you can add me on social media, Patryk, Patryk _SWIETEK. If you want to put in the show notes, Steve, that's up to you. But
I got you.
I'd love to connect and help answer any questions you may have. Yeah.
Awesome. If someone is actually looking to sell a business that happens to be in Joshua Tree, please hit up Mr. Patryk. He's happy to entertain your offer and see how to make it.
It could be anywhere. It doesn't have to be Joshua Tree.
Oh, there you go. There you go. You're expanding your horizons, my friend.
There you go.
Good stuff. All right. Thanks again, my friend. Hopefully I'll get to meet you in person soon. Good stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you, Steve.